Last Friday, a Second Circuit Court of Appeals ruled against 4 Connecticut high school female athletes who alleged that forcing them to compete against boys who identify as girls violates Title IX. Now, this despite the fact that 2 biological males broke 17 girls' track records and they won 15 girls' state championship titles. Now, in an editorial published by USA Today, one of the plaintiffs wrote of the experience, quote, "It tells me that I'm not good enough, that my body isn't good enough, and that no matter how hard I work, I am unlikely to succeed because I'm a woman," end quote. That's not the only message the court panel sent, as its opinion adopted the rhetoric of the transgender activists. For example, the plaintiffs were not high school girls, but rather, according to the court, quote, 4 female athletes who are cisgender, end quote. Why is this language a problem? Joining me now to discuss all of it is Mary Szoch. She's the director of the Center for Human Dignity at the Family Research Council, and she was also a Division I basketball player at Notre Dame. She joins me in studio. Mary, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me today, Joseph.
So first, let's just talk about the merits of the case. In this decision, the Second Circuit Court of Appeals ruled against the girl, said it's not a violation of Title IX to be forced to compete with male athletes who identify as female. What's your reaction to that?
Well, as any woman who has played sports against men knows, there are biological differences that make a huge difference when it comes to sports. Average male athletes will beat exceptional female athletes simply because of the difference in height, in jumping ability, in speed. Those are clear advantages for men. So to say that it's somehow not a disadvantage to women to have to compete against men is absolutely absurd.
Now, I mentioned the language that was used here, and I think this is really important because the court, in its opinion, essentially created a different category of women. They said, oh, well, these 4 cisgender women, is the word they used, said they were just competing against transgender women. It's like a way of saying, well, tall women were competing against shorter women, or the left-handed women were competing against right-handed women. How does that land with you to just be seen by the court and described as the court as just a different category of women than these guys who say they're women?
Right. I think it's completely crazy. You know, this idea that being a woman is something akin to putting on a blue hat or a purple dress. It's not something that you can take on and put and take off. It's something that is at the core of your very being. It's written in our DNA, whether we're male or female.
Well, on that point, I would say the court seems to be suggesting that you can take it off and put it on. And what does that mean for, you?
Right. It means that women are being erased. It means that every ceiling that has been broken, that every barrier that has been crossed, all of those have just been put back up because we can now say, oh, you know what? Men who decide that they're women, they can be the ones to take those jobs. They can be the one to take that spot on the team.
What would you say to someone who said, well, in fact, the erasure that is happening is if you deny these transgender individuals, these boys who identify as girls, the opportunity to compete as the identity that they have claimed for themselves, if you deny them that opportunity, it's you who are erasing them?
I would say there is an opportunity for men to compete. It's called men's sports. And there are not the same opportunities for women to compete. When we don't see a problem with women trying to play men's Division I sports or women suddenly winning high school track meets in the men's division. What we see are men taking gold medals away from women or taking the last seat on the bench away from a girl who has tried every single day of her life to just get a spot.
To that point, one of the things the court said in their opinion is that the plaintiffs, and this is again 4 high school, I think they were all track athletes, and I may be wrong about that, but said they were unable to prove damages in this case. That was one of the problems with their claim. What's your response to the idea that there were no damages to them?
Well, first, ridiculous thought that there are no damages to telling a girl, no matter how hard you try, you're just never going to be good enough because you're a woman and not a man. That's an absurd statement. But secondly, The things that we learn from sports are not necessarily things that can be measured, right? We learn how to be competitive, how to be a good winner and a good loser. And these are things that cannot be taught if the playing field isn't fair. The only thing that you learn there is that you are at a disadvantage because you're a woman.
And this question of harms, I think, is interesting as well, just more broadly, irrespective of the 4 girls in this particular case, because isn't there just generally a harm to society if we decide, as this court clearly has, and these boys in Connecticut who are identifying as women have, that there's really no difference between men and women other than what I imagine it to be?
Absolutely. And it's fun. If we look at car accident reports, we see that every year, significantly more women than men are killed in car accidents because the test dummies for car accidents, when they're simulating women, are just shrunken men. That's not what a woman is. A woman's not a smaller version of a man. She's something different, and that difference needs to be respected.
That's very powerful, Mary. I know this conversation is not going away, but thanks for taking some time for us today.
Thanks for having me.